So recently I was sent a rather interesting email, and in this email I was asked a question, but it wasn't one of the usual questions I get to my email like,
Hey, how powerful would Obito be if he fused with Samehada?
or something stupid like that. There's no stupid questions, but there's definitely ones I enjoy more than others. See, this question brought up an interesting plot point to me. You see, this question revolved around a moment in the 4th grade Shinobi World War when Hashirama is looking out over the battlefield with all of the Shinobi Alliance covered in Nine-Tails cloaks. As Naruto, throughout the duration of the 4th grade Shinobi World War, supplied Nine-Tails cloaks to everybody for protection and a boost in their chakra. Also for the boost in inherent healing factor that a one-tailed chakra cloak gives. But as Hashirama stares out over the entirety of the Shinobi Alliance covered in Kurama's chakra, he remarks that that's about as much chakra as he had when he was alive. Now, as Hashirama is known as one of the people with the highest amount of chakra in the entirety of Naruto's history, this is really the first ever concrete definitive point we got as a watermark for how high that chakra level could be. We knew feats of Hashirama like he was able to battle against Madara for 24 hours straight, that he was able to create a 1,000 armed Buddhist god statue to punch a Susanoo off of Kurama, and that he had an inherent healing factor that negated pretty much all damage inflicted to his body. And while he was a Senju and therefore we knew his life force was incredibly high, we never had a concrete figure for it. And therefore, anytime somebody has to pontificate on how much chakra Hashirama has, this is usually the panel they reference. But what's interesting about this panel is it's basically Hashirama admitting that he has about half the chakra of Kurama, as all of this chakra is being handed out by Naruto using Kurama's chakra. And in this heavily dispersed state of Kurama's chakra basically covering an entire battlefield, Hashirama admits that that's as much chakra as he has. Is at least one way to take that panel. We'll talk on another way you can interpret that panel in a second. But let's say hypothetically you were to interpret this panel as Hashirama saying that he had as much chakra while alive as half of Kurama, because at this moment Naruto only had half of Kurama. And if you take that hypothetical to be true, it opens up the doors for other Hokages to possibly have an argument to be able to beat Hashirama in a one-on-one fight. See, it's pretty much a well-known and established fact that Hashirama is the second most powerful Hokage ever. I mean, the dude was sparring with Madara his entire life, and between wood release, his healing factor, and supposedly his massive life force and chakra reserves, it's supposed to be Naruto, Hashirama, and then a pretty far distance to Minato. But if hypothetically we're only considering Kurama's chakra in that panel, that gap between Hashirama and Minato might get a bit smaller. In fact, it might get really small. Today, we're gonna be exploring, with this panel in mind, Hashirama versus Minato. Before we get to considering this hypothetical fight between two people who would absolutely never battle against each other, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like the idea of me doing battle videos outside of the universe of Naruto and Boruto, go ahead and follow my other page, The Weeb Commander, where I talk any anime that's not Naruto or Boruto. And if you want to watch a live versus battle, go ahead and follow my brand new podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happens in anime this week. I call it a live versus battle because Danny's always yelling at me. Go follow it and help me. So, before we get to talking about Minato versus Hashirama, I'd like to lay out a couple of ground rules. I'm going to be taking 6 things into consideration here: attack power, defensive power, durability, speed, stamina, and hacks. On top of that, I will be considering both of these people at the height of their powers. For Hashirama, I believe the height of his power was while he was actually still alive. Most likely the height of his power was in his final valley fight against Madara. You know, the fight so intense that it quite literally made the final valley, where Hashirama was catching Biju bombs with his wooden golem. Well, obviously we did see some relatively impressive feats from Hashirama in the 4th grade Shinobi World War while he was Edo Tensei, like his ability to drop the god deity gate on the 10 tails and keep it pinned. It's pretty widely agreed upon that the Hashirama we got in the 4th grade Shinobi World War was not his peak, as Hashirama, like all of the other Hokage, was brought back as he died. And while obviously Hashirama didn't look old because he was a Senju, he didn't age as fast as everybody else, which means that even though Hashirama might not look it, he could have been 50 or 60 years old in the 4th grade Shinobi World War, which would put him substantially out of his prime. Not to mention that any boosts that he got throughout a Tensei aren't really boosts for Hashirama. Like, oh cool, he's got infinite regeneration. He had that when he was alive. Oh cool, he's got infinitely refilling chakra. Running out of chakra has never been an issue for Hashirama, ever. On the other side of the coin, unfortunately, the strongest version of Minato is absolutely Edo Tensei Minato, as it was only this version of Minato who had a Jin cloak. Minato also died in the middle of his prime, so him being brought back through Edo Tensei brought back his prime body. And while we've never really seen Minato struggle with chakra, he does imply after his battle against Obito that he's a bit gassed, but then he does proceed to use Reaper Death Seal on Kurama and pull out half of him, so couldn't have been that gassed. So that kind of brings me to the moral quandary. Do we have an alive Hashirama go against the dead Minato? And if we do, that's kind of weird, right? Well, at least it feels weird to me. See, in the circumstances of our versus battle between Minato and Itachi, the strongest version of both of them is after they've died. So that was all evens. So I think for my own sanity and the integrity of this video, we're gonna do a little bit of constructive rearrangement. We're gonna be talking about Hashirama in his alive form, which doesn't mean we can't talk about feats from when he was dead, because obviously that was in a weakened form. But we're gonna be taking 4th grade Shinobi World War Minato, using his Jin cloak and his perfect sage mode, but slapping that into his alive body. That way he doesn't have an unfair advantage. I can already hear you saying,
He probably needs an unfair advantage.
and that may or may not be true. So in conclusion, we are talking alive Hashirama versus alive Minato with half of Kurama and his perfect sage mode. Got it? Good. Now that the rules are set out, I want to get back to what we were talking about previously, as I believe the true meat of this battle actually relies heavily in the stamina category. And I've kind of already showed my hand with what I'm going to be talking about today. So once again, if we establish that Hashirama has roughly the same amount of chakra as half of Kurama, it opens up the door for the possibility that Minato might actually have more chakra than him. And ironically, the chakra feat that might push Minato over Hashirama comes from the night that a lot of people use to say that Minato doesn't have that much chakra at all. So the night we're talking about is the night of Naruto's birth. The night of Naruto's birth, Minato pretty much had to be unlocked for like 6 hours straight. Obito phases into the room where Kushina is giving birth and kills Hiruzen's wife. After getting rid of Hiruzen's wife, he places Kurama, who's currently inside of Kushina, under a genjutsu that allows him to break out of her. Because while Jinchuriki is giving birth, the seal on the tailed beast is significantly weakened. Fortunately, Minato isn't the only high-level threat in Konoha at the moment, as even though his wife was just quite literally murdered, Hiruzen has to battle against Kurama. But that's not before Hiruzen does one of the most impressive things we've ever seen in Naruto. See, upon being released, Kurama goes to fire a Bijou bomb at the Stone Hokage faces. Now, should this Bijou bomb hit the Stone Hokage faces, it probably would have wiped the majority of Konoha off the map like that. But fortunately, by this time, Minato's flying Raijin technique has become so advanced, he's taught himself an ability known as Flying Thunder God, Guiding Thunder. See, while usually when Minato uses Flying Thunder God, he just teleports himself or somebody he's holding on to a specific location. And Minato has stated that the rules of Flying Thunder God allow him to take anybody or anything he wants through the dimensional void that Flying Thunder God utilizes to any place he wants. And while that alone is an insane statement, the rules do state that the denser and larger the object he brings into the dimensional void, the less far it can travel, as teleporting very large things is very chakra depletive. Minato, with the Guiding Thunder technique, teleports away a tailed beast bomb. Now, for those of you who don't know, a tailed beast bomb operates a bit like a black hole. It is inarguably the densest thing in Naruto. With an 8:2 ratio of negative to positive chakra, even hand-sized tailed beast bombs like Naruto's tailed beast Rasengan are referred to as incredibly heavy. In fact, when Naruto could not make a full tailed beast bomb and therefore had to rely on tailed beast Rasengan, he remarked that it was very heavy. Mind you, that's Naruto, who can undoubtedly lift thousands of pounds. Now scale that tail beast Rasengan up, I don't know, 1,000 times in size, and you have something that could weigh hypothetically 1,000 to 2,000 tons. Quite literally millions of pounds. Which technically isn't even Minato's most impressive teleportation feat, as Minato is able, with obviously the help of Naruto and his chakra, to teleport the entirety of the Shinobi Alliance outside of the barrier that Jubito created, meaning that so long as Minato has enough chakra, there's really no upper boundary to what he can and cannot teleport using Flying Raijin. But that's not really what we're focusing on right now. The reason that I'm talking about Minato using Guiding Thunder is because it is an incredibly chakra-intensive move. You can see during the 4th grade Shinobi World War that even with the assistance of Naruto and his chakra, that after teleporting the entirety of the Shinobi Alliance outside of Obito's barrier, the Minato's kind of gassed. And while obviously his Jin cloak is still activated, he is panting. So what am I driving at here? Well, outside of using Guided Thunder to teleport away arguably one of the densest things in the entirety of the Naruto verse that night, Minato, after doing that, had to go and battle against Obito, where he's forced to use chakra-intensive techniques like Flying Raijin and Rasengan, not to mention all the teleporting he did around to make sure that Kushina and Naruto were safe. But once again, what am I driving at? Well, what I want to talk about is how Naruto's first birthday comes to an end. And I'm not talking about Hiruzen throwing him in an apartment with ramen and spoiled milk. I'm talking about Minato sealing half of Kurama into Naruto and the other half into himself. See, Minato understands that if he were to seal the entirety of Kurama into Naruto as a baby, Naruto would most likely die. Therefore, Minato elects elects to seal half of Kurama inside of Naruto and use an 8 trigram seal that'll allow Naruto to access that chakra. But the problem is that still leaves half of the world's most powerful tailed beast on a rampage. And therefore, Minato decides to take the other half of the chakra with himself. But the way that he decides to take this chakra is interesting. See, Minato decides to use Reaper Death Seal. And honestly, this is a very ballsy play, because Reaper Death Seal doesn't just guarantee you pull the soul out of whoever you grab. Reaper Death Seal, we learned from Hiruzen, is a tug of war. You can only pull out as much soul as you have chakra in comparison to the person you're using this technique on. Therefore, since Minato is able to seal the entire half of Kurama inside of himself, that would imply in that moment that Minato had as much chakra as half of Kurama. You see where I'm driving at? Because hypothetically, if Minato didn't have as much chakra as half of Kurama, he wouldn't have been able to seal all of that Kurama. He could have sealed half of Kurama and left a quarter of Kurama to rampage around Konoha. But he didn't do that. He sealed the entirety of 1/2 of Kurama, which would mean that Minato, in a relatively weakened state, considering the fact he had just used incredibly chakra depletive jutsus, still had as much chakra as half of Kurama, which would imply that in a fully healthy state that Minato has more chakra than half of Kurama. Now you could argue that the adamantite chains that Kushina was using, or having half of his chakra pulled out with the 8 trigram seal, put Kurama in a more sealable state, but that's not how Reaper Death Seal works. We know for all intents and purposes it is a chakra tug of war, and Minato won, which means that you could highball Minato's chakra levels to around 75% of Kurama, because I'll remind you that Minato did want to seal Kurama in Naruto, as Jiraiya had told Minato about the Child of Prophecy, and Minato believed that Naruto would be the Child of Prophecy, and that's why he used the 8 trigram seal, which would slowly leak out Kurama's chakra into Naruto's chakra network, allowing him to use it. So does this mean that Minato has more chakra than Hashirama? Well, that depends on how you interpret Hashirama saying this is about as much chakra as I had when I was alive. See, if we sit there and look at that clip and say this is only Kurama's chakra that's being passed around to the entirety of the Shinobi Alliance, well then yes, of course, considering the fact that Naruto at that moment only had half of Kurama would absolutely imply that Minato had more chakra than Hashirama. But we have to take something else into consideration here, and that's Naruto. See, at the point that Hashirama remarks that this is as much chakra as I had when I was alive, Kurama and Naruto are working collaboratively. And while the majority of the chakra being given to the Shinobi Alliance is probably that of Kurama, there's also probably a fair amount of Naruto's chakra in there. As to go back to the moment when Minato and Naruto connected their chakra to teleport everybody out of Obito's barrier, Hashirama refers to this partial connection through everybody using the chakra cloaks as the rule of shadow clones, where everybody was connected through Naruto and Minato's chakra, meaning that these cloaks placed in the Shinobi Alliance had at least a little bit of Naruto's chakra. Therefore, I wouldn't say that Hashirama's chakra level is equal to half of Kurama. I would say that Hashirama's chakra level was equal to that of half of Kurama plus Naruto. And since Naruto is half Uzumaki and able to use 1,000 shadow clones at once, having that plus Naruto is a big plus. So all in all, does Hashirama have more chakra than Minato? Yes. But is it a lot closer than the majority of people argue that it is? Absolutely. We know from Naruto using Baryon mode that he is roughly equal to the same amount of chakra as Kurama, as both Naruto and Kurama were colliding their chakra into each other to create a new form of energy, and Kurama ran out of chakra first. Now, it's heavily implied that Kurama was overexpending his chakra in this exchange in order to make sure that he ran out before Naruto, so using this as a scaling argument to get a real grasp on how much more chakra Hashirama has than Minato isn't the best idea. But all in all, I would say my best and most accurate approximation would be that if Minato is 65% of Kurama, then Hashirama is probably around 100%. And at the upper levels of power and chakra levels like that, it's basically endless for both of them, though stamina does have to go to Hashirama. Now that we've got what is arguably the most contentious point out of the way, we should talk about the other 5 categories. The first of which being attack power. Now this one, unfortunately, isn't close. While both Minato and Hashirama are perfect sages, Hashirama's battle style complements sage mode significantly better. See, the reason that Hashirama is such a threat as a sage mode user is because of his wood release, and not because his Senjutsu chakra superpowered his wood release, though that definitely does help. It's actually because Hashirama is able to stand still for the majority of his battles. See, Hashirama uses his wood release to move for him, riding along massive root structures that carry him anywhere he needs to go. The reason that Hashirama not moving is relatively really important is because while Hashirama is not moving, he can be constantly pulling in Senjutsu chakra, which makes him an incredibly dangerous Sage user. Because on top of the fact that Hashirama basically has limitless chakra, he also already basically has limitlessly refilling chakra when he activates Sage mode. And since we simply just don't know what kind of Sage Hashirama is, we can't say whether or not Hashirama is able to pull in too much Senjutsu chakra, as we've never seen him go crazy like Jugo, or start to petrify like somebody who learned Sage mode at Mount Mubuko, pulling in too much nature chakra. Therefore, so long as Hashirama is able to stand still on top of his massive wood constructs that do all the battling for him, he's basically a perpetual motion machine. Hashirama's most powerful attacks really boil down to 3 things. Hashirama's just base wood golem has been shown to go toe-to-toe with Madara's full-body Susanoo. Mind you, this full-body Susanoo was able to break out of Gaara's grand sand mausoleum he was doing in conjunction with Shukaku, and the Susanoo killed the 5 Kage in the 4th Great Shinobi World War and cut a mountain in half. And Hashirama's just base wood golem with a wood dragon around his shoulders has been shown to be as powerful as that Susanoo. Outside of that, Hashirama also has the God Deity Gates, also known as Sage Art Gate of the Great God. These are gates that Hashirama, while in Sage mode, is able to call from the heavens. These gates, also known as Tori in Japan, these gates were able to hold down Kurama, the Ten Tails, and Obito as the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. And while I love Minato, even with half of Kurama, he doesn't match to any of those things. And that's without mentioning Sage Art True Several Thousand Hands, where Hashirama quite literally reincarnates a Buddhist god made out of wood and has articulate motion over thousands of 100-feet long arms. And let's all say it together, this technique was strong enough to punch a Susanoo off of Kurama, with dual EMS Madara standing on top of it. And that's without even mentioning things like Deep Forest Emergence, where Hashirama is able to make massive roots that sprout out of the ground and create flowers that release toxic gases. While for Minato, as far as attack power goes, it really boils down to Flying Raijin and Rasengan. And while obviously the Rasengan and Flying Raijin are nothing to scoff at. I mean, with these 2 abilities and a couple of kunai, Minato was able to kill 1,000 Iwa shinobi. But when it comes to sheer attack power, you'd be insane to not give this to Hashirama. Ironically, however, in our next category, defensive power, it's not so clear-cut. See, when we're talking about defensive power, the natural inclination may be to side with Hashirama. And while that might be the case, it also may not be the case. So yes, I fully understand that in order to get to Hashirama, you're gonna have to go through his wooden constructs. And we have seen some insane feats out of these wooden constructs, with Hashirama's wooden golem bare-handing Bijou bombs. On the other end of things, Minato is able to fully manifest Kurama. And being able to fully manifest Kurama's chakra mode is kind of insane. And as Minato is just as perfect a Jinchuriki to Kurama as Naruto is, I have absolutely no problem saying that Minato's defensive abilities in this Kurama chakra mode are any different from Naruto's. At least when we're talking about while Naruto only had half of Kurama. And Naruto, with half of Kurama in this fully manifested form, was able to go toe-to-toe with Sasuke's Susanoo, going so far as to smack one of Sasuke's swords out of his Susanoo's hands with his tail, stop Sasuke from cutting him with 2 Susanoo swords by blocking with his tail, and even tank a Kiri, something that Itachi Susanoo was barely able to do. Not to mention that this chakra mode was able to survive all the blasts of tailed beast bombs running into Susanoo Chidoris, which were seen to have explosions roughly double the size of a regular tailed beast bomb. And mind you, one tailed beast bomb probably would have wiped about half of Konoha off the map. So when it comes down to it, Minato's ability to manifest this mode gives him defensive power equal to that, or possibly greater than Hashirama. And now, before you even start, I know what you're saying. You're saying,
But Hashirama was able to overpower this mode when he battled against a full power Kurama covered in a Susanoo.
but that's taking Hashirama's attack power into consideration. What I'm saying is the defensive abilities of this chakra mode and Hashirama's ability to defend himself using his wood release are similar. However, there is one problem. Wood release is naturally strong against tailed beast chakra. Therefore, even though Minato would have comparable defensive measures as Hashirama, they would be weakened against his attack. And therefore, even though if they were fighting against not each other, I would consider their defenses to be somewhat equal. If you're pitting wood release against tailed beast chakra, it always has an inherent bonus. And thus, defensive power also goes to Hashirama, which brings us to another not so obvious category: durability. And once again, I know what you're saying. You're saying,
Nick, how dare you say that Minato and Hashirama have comparable durability?
mitotic regeneration was based off of Hashirama's inherent healing factor. We know that Hashirama wouldn't have to wield a singular hand sign in order to heal. His durability is the highest in the show, except for maybe the likes of Naruto. So yes, absolutely, Hashirama does have an inherent healing factor. We know he can heal entire arms or organs that have been destroyed. And the rate and power of this healing has been compared to mitotic regeneration, which allows Tsunade and Sakura to die 100 times in combat. But you know who else also has an insane healing factor? Naruto. And while obviously Naruto is half Uzumaki and therefore has a heightened life force and therefore has a faster healing factor than most people, this is evidence of the fact that Karin sharing her life force with people by allowing them to bite her heals them instantaneously. Naruto's true healing factor comes from Kurama, which is how Naruto is able to shirk off things like Ishiki filling him with black rods, being stabbed in the stomach by Shin Uchiha, having his lung destroyed by Sasuke in the early days of Naruto. You guys remember that when Sasuke literally just punched a hole in Naruto and he was just fine? And Minato's healing factor, while probably not as powerful, is comparable to this, as Minato has as much Kurama chakra as Naruto had for the majority of Naruto's timeline, which means that Minato is able to pretty much instantaneously heal from wounds as well. But since I would still argue that Hashirama's healing factor was greater than that of Naruto's and that Minato might be a little bit worse than Naruto as far as regen goes, I, once again, am gonna have to give this one to Hashirama. But speaking of things going to Hashirama, this next category simply will not, because this next category is speed. Now, much in the same way that Hashirama's attack power massively eclipses Minato's speed massively eclipses Hashirama's. Minato has borderline irrelevant speed. The way the Flying Raijin works is that it allows Minato to travel between two markers instantaneously. Not in a second, not in half a second, not in 0.1 second, not in a millionth of a second. The second that it's activated, he is at another marker. This works because Minato slips into a dimensional void and basically reverse summons himself to other markings. And since there's no matter in this dimensional void, Minato is able to travel limitlessly fast, meaning that he is massively faster than light. If Minato were to place one seal on one side of the universe and one seal on the other, he could travel across the universe in an instant. Combine this with his lethal intellect and the fact that these seals never go away, and you have the kind of man who can wipe out an entire platoon of 1,000 Iwa shinobi to end the Third Great Shinobi World War. On top of this, Minato might have the fastest reaction time in all of Naruto, and that's Naruto included. See, when Might Guy opened the 8th gate and was battling against Madara, it was kind of a collaborative effort between Kakashi, Minato, and Might Guy to kill Madara. While Kakashi was focused on kamuiing away a part of Minato's true secret orbs to leave an opening for Might Guy to kick, Minato was focused on making sure that the true secret orbs being shot at Might Guy wouldn't hit Might Guy. And in order to make sure that didn't happen, Minato threw his kunai in front of Might Guy, teleported himself to the kunai, let the true secret orbs hit him, and teleported away. Minato did this so fast in the anime that it made the true secret orbs in Might Guy look like they were moving in slow motion. Mind you, Rock Lee, after opening the 4th or 5th gate in the Chunin exam, moved so fast that the human eye couldn't track him. In the 8th gate, Might Guy was moving so fast, he was bending space-time. However, Minato was able to move so fast and react so quickly that it made that guy look slow. Now, obviously, Hashirama's reaction time and speed is no joke, but there's no really good moment for us to quantify exactly how fast Hashirama is like we have with Minato. So this one very easily falls into Minato's lap, which leaves us with hacks. And honestly, as far as his versus battles go, I'm willing to call this a coin flip. Hashirama has his Senju life force, his wood release, his endless chakra, his healing factor, his perfect sage mode. While Minato has his flying Raijin, his endless power bank and half of Kurama, perfect sage mode, Rasengan. And considering the fact that we saw Naruto blow away a deep forest emergence from Madara using the power of Kurama and Rasengans, these hacks feel all but equal to me. So it really boils down to who wins. And the answer is, unfortunately and uninterestingly, Hashirama. Any way you really splice it, Hashirama winning against dual MS Madara with the entirety of Kurama under his control kind of negates this entire conversation. Obviously, we know that Tailed Beast becomes stronger when working in conjunction with a Jinchuriki, and therefore simply controlling the entirety of Kurama isn't as strong as if Madara was the Jinchuriki of Kurama. But we are talking about the difference between a full Kurama and a half Kurama here. So is the boost in strength to being a Jinchuriki double? Truly, the only win state I see for Minato here is if he gets a Flying Raijin seal on Hashirama. See, in one of Naruto's data books, Flying Raijin was actually likened to a Juin jutsu, which is a jutsu that kills the person it's used on. As if somebody who uses Flying Raijin is able to get a Flying Raijin seal on your body, you're all but dead. As basically any time for the rest of your life, no matter where you are, that person can teleport to you and stab you to death. And that alone is pretty much the only way that Minato would be able to kill Hashirama. And the problem with that is, even if Minato, in the course of his battle against Hashirama, was able to get one of these seals on Hashirama, even if Minato did teleport into Hashirama's bedroom while he was sleeping and stab him a bunch, Hashirama would wake up long before he died. And then it would just be starting from square one. Honestly, I would liken this battle to the battle between Zombie Man and Pure Blood in One Punch Man. Minato would have to kill Hashirama around 200 times to have any hopes of actually winning. He would essentially have to use guerrilla warfare and wear down Hashirama. Because even if hypothetically Minato delivered one of his deadliest Rasengans to Hashirama, I don't think it would kill him. And I honestly don't consider Reaper Death Seal a win state. So while yes, the realization that Minato might have comparable chakra to Hashirama does make him closer to Hashirama in the conversation, it unfortunately has not closed the gap. I don't know why I'm saying unfortunately. These are like my two favorite Hokages of all time. But what do you guys think? Do you think Minato could take Hashirama in a fight? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, hit that noti bell. Did anybody see the guy with a Minato tattoo having Minato lose in this battle? No, neither did I. Honestly, I started this video and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make sure Minato wins. And then I got to reading some of my points and I was like, oh, never mind. That doesn't make sense.